Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today's meetup. This is a really exciting one, which I'm going to save for Christina to introduce. But just in terms of like housekeeping and house rules, the session is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel. We do obviously love engagement and questions, but we want to keep the presentation flowing. So we'll be saving 10 minutes at the end for some questions and discussion. If you would prefer, you can raise your hand to ask your question, or you can drop it in the chat. So yeah, with that said, I'm going to hand over to Christina.
Thank you so much, Maddie. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to walk you through what ecosystem code is and how we're rethinking the way that software systems are designed and built. A bit about me: I am the product lead for ecosystem code, and it is my responsibility to ensure that we build systems that solves the coordination problems that teams face today, whether this is between product, architecture, analysis, and delivery. And so that means shaping the platform around workflows and protecting the core design principles. And this is done through ways where we work closely with our users to ensure that ecosystem code is practical, that it is usable, and it is grounded in how systems are built and maintained. And so today we'll just walk through ecosystem code at a high level and looking at its core capabilities. Jay will go deeper into the technical details and show you how these capabilities work in practice. So at its core, ecosystem code is an AI-driven platform that is designed to turn intent into infrastructure, where we enable teams to turn linguistic inputs, so whether these are user stories, epics, and system definitions, and transform them directly into UML diagrams and a runnable full system stack. So to understand why this matters, we clarify what we mean by intent. So intent is human understanding, and this is not code. So it is the plain description behind how a system is built before it is implemented. So and this lives in the user story, and where we describe what users want to do in the requirements and specifications that define the user rules and constraints, in the diagrams and models that capture architectural vision, in conversations and meetings. And this is also embedded in slide decks or documentation that frames the business goals. And the problem with intent, as it moves from planning to implementation, it is constantly reinterpreted, whether this is different roles, different tools, and over time as well. And so that's exactly how we end up with systems that technically work, but we don't quite reflect what was originally meant. And what ecosystem code does is that it directly collapses this gap, where traditionally we had intent, which connects to documentation, which connects to interpretation, which connects to code, which connects to correction. Ecosystem enables intent to flow from the user story into the executable design, into the runnable system. So in practical terms, the words that are used to describe your system directly produce the structure the system runs on. And that is what we mean when we say that ecosystem turns intent into infrastructure. At the core of that, we have a Discord community that is central to this. And we've built this community to support our users and also to open the line of communication. You can just scan the QR code on your screen. We have a dedicated team of engineers and product contributors that are available to provide feedback and support and guidance as you build. Even during the session, if you have any questions, you can just drop them on Discord, or even here in the chat. And the space is designed to facilitate meaningful discussions around the system design, the architecture, the use cases, and even real-world feedback on the platform. And one of the perks that our community gets is early access to features, direct feedback from myself and the team, and also any discussions around the architecture or any examples and hands-on support. In the future, we are also looking to launch an enterprise version of ecosystem code, and this is designed for larger teams and organizations that need stronger governance, collaboration, and control without sacrificing speed or design integrity. Once you've signed up and joined, we look forward to you sharing your first project that you've built using ecosystem code by just sharing a screenshot in our community showcase channel. And we are happy to award you with an extra 1 million tokens completely on us. And now I will hand over to Jay.
Thanks, Christina, for the great introduction and setting the scene for us. What I'll do is just take you through a handful of kind of slides just to give you the positioning on where we're at, what we're working on. So the construct is that how do you take some linguistic understanding and turn it into a running system as quickly as possible? while you have the ability to influence the design before you get it into a deployable state to demonstrate it to somebody. So historically, if you think about the agile process and people spending a enormous amount of time writing epics and user stories, and then put onto a backlog, and then working through those backlogs, in very, very long periods of time. The idea is that, and the vision for us is that, can I take the epic and while I'm discussing it with a business, generate the system to demonstrate to them how it might work? So that's kind of the vision. And initially, the core framework that has been created essentially allows it to happen. So we've got deterministic as well as generative capabilities, using a special way in how we deal with the attention story that normally is a problem with a lot of these coding tools. The vision is to shorten the circle of how we normally go through these cycles of doing things. So let's just look at a couple of positioning kind of views. The first thing is, the biggest challenge with vibe coding is that you have an enormous cycle of just giving a linguistic prompt and expecting it to do work for you, even if you pointed at existing code bases and the like. So you have no architectural visibility around your enterprise scaffold and what you've created already. So for us, the core construct is that we have found over the last many years that architectures have evolved quite significantly with the on-premise versus cloud scenarios. So how can you take something that is already known to you and have that available so that you don't have to break the rules and have to redo things over and over again? The other thing is, you want to be able to validate your code continuously. You want to be able to have a multi-pass approach so that you can take the intent to the outcome rather than having thousands of lines being generated that is not really going to do the work for you. And the other thing is that, and probably one of the biggest issues, is that the immediate stakeholder feedback is, can you take a person that is almost entirely business-oriented and to generate a system and then use that as the basis to extend it into some future capabilities that you then want to start and build out from there. But we all know that we did use diagramming tools sometimes to document our systems and to deal with this kind of large-scale, especially we call it diagrams dying confluence, because if I think of how many UML diagrams in designs and class diagrams and sequence and all of those diagrams that are often just used for documentation and is completely disconnected from the output. So it means that ability to execute historically was to create maybe just stubs or some way of getting your core system to work, but you don't really have that key connection to the code that runs. And that means that it becomes incredibly problematic because it's very expensive for you to maintain these case tools and to deal with them. And in our world, by the way, diagramming capabilities are entirely free. We will extend them over time. So when you use the tool today, you'll see that the way that you can do class diagrams or sequence diagrams or activities or state, or you can do a system or a package. Here are the core diagrams that I needed to find an entire system design-wise. The diagrammatic methods will evolve over time, but for now, there is a full stack capability available to you, and that is to use if you want to model anything inside the tool, if you just want to use it for modeling without any generating capability. So that means that, if you want to just get going and you want to build any code from scratch, anybody who's built any system from scratch will know the pain that you have to go through. There's this enormous amount of time that you have to put in to make sure that you can get, these core, decisions made around your architecture, on how you deploy it, your database capabilities, your integration, your front end versus back end, and all the pieces that normally make up a total system is enormously difficult for most companies to get right. And that's why they often will just buy it. So yeah, it's kind of the positioning. And the positioning is that if you want architectural quality against the speed of running code, our idea is that you have deterministic architecture and have a generative capability to influence what you do with that. So if you add additional rules, you want to be able to build further capabilities, you want to use plugins that were built in context of, let's say, your business, and you want to integrate it into a deterministic architecture to make sure that it's reliable. The idea is that we see that that is going to become quite a big focus going into the future. So the other thing is that if you want to still use your generic tooling, you can just take ecosystem MCP and connect it with Cursor or Windsurf or whatever other tool or Claude Code, and you can let it make the decision for you around some of the coding structures that you want to make sure that is done in whatever the way that you want to have done. So for today's purposes, is that what we want to make sure we understand is the kind of role that will benefit and why a role will benefit in the context of using a tool like this. These are some indicative kind of views that we've taken on how some of these roles use what we do. So if you're a product lead and you have a key vision, and you don't even have a well-defined description of the system, so you don't have an epic, you don't have necessarily your requirement written out yet, you just know that you have a domain understanding of what it is that you want to achieve, what you can do is you can use us to give it a one-liner, and in demonstration, I'll show how that works. You can give one liner and ask it to generate you the entire design for that liner. Our domain understanding that we use behind the scenes will attempt to match that domain that you are interested in to whatever the design construct is, so that it'll then make an assumption. And as software architect, you want to be able to see how this thing runs in, let's say, a cloud scenario or an on-prem scenario, and then deploy it within your environment to see if you can scale it or not. They want to know how you can use various components that fit together. I want to have, let's say, a code that relates to a product, relates to a certain situation or a channel. The other thing that we're seeing is that consultants need these kinds of tools going forward, because the take to make sense of how a user really wants to use what they have to offer is just too long. So how do you compress that time and then make sure that you have got something that you can start from that gives you some speed? Okay, so what I want to do in a moment is take through the kind of AI code capability that we have. We now know that the industry is pretty much already in motion, and the design of ecosystem code started probably about 6 months ago. We spent a lot of time with companies like Anthropic to understand how some of the existing code generation tools use, especially their concept around contextual understanding of larger systems and how that plays out. We took a view on that in the context of our internal research around how we see an agentic system needs to do that. And that means that you want to have an MCP capability, a model context protocol capability, so that you can bolt anything that you do in this context into whatever your existing tooling is. And if you wanted to, let's say, generate a bunch of options overnight, you'll be able to automate that end to end. And then the last one is just that you want an enterprise AI first mandate. And I think that the era we're moving into now is that there's this enormous debate. Do I evolve or like basically maintain and evolve, or do I build from scratch if I know that the from scratch means that I can get it done in days or weeks instead of years? And that means that you open up a new set of options in the context of the evolution of software within the enterprise. And we see that that's going to create an enormous different outcome than what we expected even from the previous era of how we used AI tools leading up to now. So what I'll do is I'll take you through a couple of the concepts. We can look at the visual modeler and how you deal with how the code gets generated, how the full stack gets built, how you deal with the deployment capability, and then eventually I'll just touch on one or two of the project capabilities. It's not full project management per se, but you can manage your releases, you can share it with people in the team, and you will be able to see how all of those pieces fit together. Start with just looking at our website for those who are interested. You'll see that everything that we've just been through now with the kind of positioning is available there for you. And there is a see in action section that you can look at examples running, and you'll be able to see how it works in detail. There are some examples, in the context of epics and user stories with some visualizations that will help you just to get a feel for how the product works, what final running app, would be able to do for you at the end. The other thing you probably want to just think about is that in the context of the pricing, there's a free option that you get. You can stay on a free tier. There is a premium and a pro tier, and then there's the enterprise stack that is outside of the store. But that's essentially just so that you can get a feel for what's in our kind of marketing store. Like Christina was saying, if you go to Discord, there's a whole channel where we can discuss everything about the products. So when I sign in, what you'll see, I'm already signed in. That's why this took me back to my sign in. You'll see that there's a project dashboard with all of your projects. In this case, you can see I've been very busy with this particular user in testing cases. We've burnt, if I think about it now, about 20 billion tokens a month in testing. So we've done an enormous amount of work in making sure that the contextual modeling that is needed for this kind of generative tool to work, you need to do an enormous amount of testing. And that means testing across various types of architectures and various types of prompt models, especially when it comes to the systems prompt in the context of a deterministic outcome. Just before we start, if you go to settings, you'll see that you can see that this is the number of tokens burnt for this last round of tests for the last probably 2 weeks or so, 36 million tokens. You can also see that in our storage, these are the cases that I've generated recently, and it will save all of your cases that you've generated, so you can go back later and you can download it if you need to. There are also plugins that you can use that are built-in plugins and custom plugins. So the built-in plugins currently that we support are the ecosystem runtime capabilities from the ecosystem business. So you'll be able to set up a recommender connection or some connection that will generate the entire environment for you. The other thing is that in the server connectivity, we provide you with various ways in which you can connect into the broader MCP community. So you can either do it through a JWT authentication token, and how Claude does it, and Anthropic, companies like those often use just a JWT key. And here we also provide what a sample snippet of code would look like if you wanted to put this into your either local Claude or into a version that you can share with your team. And then we have an OAuth2 version as well. So if you set up a connection with OpenAI, they all use OAuth2, and a lot of even Grok and a lot of the tools use OAuth. So that means that it will validate your username while you're inside the chat tool. So you can access everything that sits inside ecosystem without having to go to the interface. So everything that we do essentially is done through agents with tools. I think there are about 104 tools in total, where in our public deployment, about 64 of those tools are accessible through whatever the front end is. But it just tells you that all that you have to do is put that particular path into your AI tool, and you'll be able to connect to the back end. The other thing is that when you set up your system, it's a little bit like the rules that you would use in any agentic environment. In our context, you can set up the target code platform that you want to push it into. We do have limited support at the moment, and that's why we need a lot of feedback from the community to see where our focus would be. The front end at the moment is almost entirely wrapped into React. We have got versions that we will support over time in early dev, but they're not publicly accessible just yet. You'll see that the backend server has been probably the biggest challenge for us to pick the right combination of architectures to work. So if we think of something like Node.js and the Node server infrastructure, it's probably one of the fastest server environments that I think most tech companies would use, especially at scale. Then Python with Fast API or Django or Flask, or Java with Spring Boot. We also have a C# implementation with .NET. That means that you could essentially generate your entire C#. I'll show you in a moment what the code generation looks like, and it'll then use the .NET framework for you to be able to run that. Go and Gin, Go and Echo, and then Rust and Actix. So that means that we will probably see that a lot of the high-speed apps will probably move more to the Rust space, and then the enterprise stack might be in C# or in Java. And then the people who want to build their own apps for high-speed deployment probably will use Node. So we kind of see a combination of these evolve over time. The other thing is we've got to split between the basically NoSQL and SQL scenarios. Postgres and Mongo definitely seem to be some of the most preferred options for most people. MySQL and Microsoft SQL, SQLite. You'll see that cloud data infrastructures are supported when you decide to do a target into the cloud when you generate your code, and I'll show you that in a moment. You'll see that a lot of changes will come down the line here for system support going forward. But it basically just means that you can generate this entire stack, everything being connected with your security implemented and everything else that you need. And by the way, every time you generate a server using ecosystem, it generates you a full MCP environment. So you can literally, once it's generated, connect it straight into any public AI tool or ML flow, anything else that you want to deploy it into. Then you'll see that the system definition by default, we leave empty. We use systems prompt behind the scenes if you want to influence your system's definition. So if you have existing rules around naming conventions and the like, or any kind of specific validations, there's also an implementation plan that you can influence. The code generation options, there are a number of options you can set, and especially to the cloud target, because if you target it into a specific cloud environment, we do, in a current deterministic structure, make some of those decisions for you. The idea is that in our enterprise stack, and the early tests we've done with a few clients have shown that we've got absolute control over what we want that target environment to be. So that means that if you want to set it up AWS or GCP or Azure, it will target it with all of the security configurations the way you want to have it done. So it needs a fairly well-defined definition coming from you. In the enterprise definition version, so in this case, enterprise access is turned on for this demo user, just to maybe give you a glimpse of that. There is a tiering system for how you can set up if you wanted to use some of your own LLMs. We have got our own LLM backend infrastructure with the multi-layer approach in cloud data centers, but the idea is that you will be able to decide how you want to deploy this. This is some background to set up your initial environment. When you then create a project, maybe what I should do is kick one off now so we can run it for the duration. You can either do it through generate new, it's like a wizard that fast track you to get something done, or you can create a project from scratch. And once you've given the project a name, you can then generate something that's an output for you. Why don't we just follow this one here? I'm going to give it a name. We're going to call it the CRM for software company. So what happens is that it starts with the Quickstart generator. The idea is that you need to give it a system description. And this system description will be analyzed for some kind of domain understanding. And once that's done, it will then do a whole lot of work to give you some options to decide on how you want to do further generations. I just want to say here to it, this should be turned on. Let's quickly check. Create a CRM system for a software company, products and services. Let's make it as simple as that. I'm just going to give it a simple definition. So let's see if it can make an assumption of what we're talking about. So when you do analyze system, you can see here that it's talking to CRM, that the world knows means client relationship management. The world knows what a software company is. The world knows what a product looks like and a service looks like. So now what it's done an interpretation of the domain of understanding of what it needs to do, and it will make a recommendation around the number of class diagrams, and that means that the connection of the object model with your data environment, sequence diagrams or sequences, activities. State diagrams are determined automatically once it's created a class diagram, so that's marked like that. Package and component diagram, the architectural deployment models, now those get described. So you can see here that it's got customer lifecycle, product lifecycle, and in this case, it's going to generate a whole lot of diagrams. There are 4 entities: customer, product, service, and company. And when we then say generate, this prepares us for the run to happen in the background, and we kick off the job. Why did that do that now? Let's go check. CRM software company, CRM for a software company. This, nice. Anyway, let's check. So now what happens is it kicked off the job. The first thing that it does is tries to figure out what the overall job is. You can see the logs in detail. You can look at it on a timeline. And this gives you an understanding of how the sequence of execution takes place. So it'll first get domain understanding, break up the construct of what you want to build, work out what the details are, figure out deterministic templates for each section, create the context, will then decide based on a fairly specific design, build out the detail, and will then get going with figuring out what it needs to do in the context of that build. So while this is running, if we go to another version, let's make sure I refresh it so you can see it's still running there. It shows the jobs are busy running. Let's go look at one that has already been done. So while that normally will take, it could take as little as 10 minutes or maybe as long as 20 minutes, depending on the ability and the complexity of what the domain in this context, was determined around. So we just have to wait and see how it essentially works out what it needs to do. You can see there it's busy generating that one for us. So if we take just one or two other ones, let's say here's a kind of a sales system that's already generated before. What you'll notice is that there are a number of different diagram types. Or let's just start with the project. There's a project definition. You can create a diagram and a number of different diagram types that are created for you. In the context, you can also generate additional contextual prompts. One is the contextual prompt that applies to the project itself if you wanted to enhance it, or you can generate your prompt from a description. The other thing is that the systems definition is often used when you wanted to deal with authentication or validation, additional rules that you add. Then you can decide on the target architecture that you want it to be deployed in by the time you then get it to a point where you actually want to deploy this into a local environment to run it. And you can also then go back to the generative capability to decide if you want to make changes to your existing model, if you wanted to do some rethinking or change some of the descriptions, or you want to add classes, or you want to rethink the entire model, you add a new description, you can go do another generation component of it. If I go to the project settings, you'll see that it's now got the storage only for this particular project that was generated previously, and it's got plugins, and you will note here that it's got a thing called a custom plugin. And the custom plugin essentially is a kind of plugin that you can add where you can influence the entire architectural stack, and it'll bolt in that code without breaking the full deployment. So that means that you can get it done very, very quickly in the context of any customization that you normally would need done, you can get it done there. The other thing is you can share your project with somebody else. So you can share either view or edit, and especially if you want to get other people to look at it. Every time that you do a deployment, you'll see that it will then create a version. I haven't done a deployment of this project. We're going to do one now, so I'll show you what it does. It will create you a new version, or you can manually create new versions that you can roll back to. Want to do that. The other thing that we do is that there is a concept called a contextual prompt. The contextual prompt, if you look at a generated prompt construct, you can ask it to create a cursor prompt for you. So if you wanted to use other AI tools alongside us, or if you want to use Claude Code and you want to create a prompt that's quite complete without you having to do a bunch of typing, you already have the domain understanding because it took the domain design to create your full description. You'll then see that what it will do, it will extrapolate all of the work into something that if you give this to an LLM, it is incredibly accurate in producing outcomes for you that might be useful for you. So I find that the use case might even be that you just use us initially to create your cursor prompt to continue with your tooling while this creates a full scaffold, or would you generate a full scaffold with our environment and you still point code to that directory, or you take Cursor or Windsurf and you point it to the project and you then extend from there. So you have full course in place and it come with Cursor rule embedded and everything like that, so that whatever you then build on top of that will make it a lot easier to deploy and to make it far more reliable than what you normally have with a lot of these tools. And this is just the system definition implementation like I showed previously, the tech stack that you can influence here. And in an enterprise, if you turn this on, what you'll notice, if this project was an enterprise project, there are a whole lot of other things that you can do, because you can now set up your models, and also for the target per platform, you can decide how you want to deal with things like networking, storage, security, and the compute across those three. That will generate the full scripts in Terraform or in whatever the format is that is needed for you to deploy your tech stack in those environments without having to do any of that by hand. So once you've kind of reviewed your project, and listen, this is too big. I want to go pick one that's a lot smaller. Okay, this is still something happened to my network. But just very quickly looking while that's busy loading, you see here you got they had executed the various steps to get you to do the planning and everything up front, system planning. And that basically these prepare the planning stage. Now it's busy executing the steps to figure out for each section of the plan what it's going to be doing. And it sets the context for everything that you do underneath that. So if we pick one of these, this could be a nice one. It's not so big. It's a bit smaller than the other case. It's a CRM system for a gaming company. So if you look at the context, it tells you I'm a CRM design specific hospitality gaming sectors incorporating all necessary core entities. That's basically the outline of the project definition. And if we just go look at the technology, in this case, I'm just saying use the defaults. So it will then target it in the default deployment. If I go to generate code, and let's not even change any of the diagrams, maybe just look at the class diagram that is often a core part of what you want to look at. So here you can see this is the class diagram with all of the details defined. Those are the attributes and the methods that it's already worked out that you can kind of change if you want to make any changes to it. If you want to see the whole thing, it gets a bit messy, but the point is you can see the relationships as to how everything in your class diagram relates. You could also, if you wanted to, you can add classes, interfaces, or whatever to this diagram before you do your final, before you do a generate of a system once you've decided on what to do. Okay, so let's go into generate mode. In this case, you can see that it's done the pre-check for me. So this is telling me my tech stack is, so it'll use a default. I'm doing it in React, Node, and Mongo, asking it to do it deterministically, and I don't want to burn any token, check my early design. If you go enhanced, it will then do a bunch of additional work for you. But if you use step one, it's typically best to run a deterministic system. It takes 0 token because it's already now in the back end of that diagram. What we do behind the scenes while this job is busy running and while it takes a bit of time is it prepares the entire core structure of that system already for you. It is ready to be deployed almost instantaneously once that's done. In this case, you can decide REST or GraphQL for your API definitions. You also have then generation options here that you can set. So normally we use Docker Compose for the database setting. You don't want to install these things natively on your own environment. There are some preconditions, and I'll show you in a moment what that looks like. You can enable security. It will then set up a JWT environment with all of the security structure with the login screen and all of that for you as well. You can also decide if you want to give it additional generative instructions that it will execute at a generate time, and that only applies to the AI node. The server deployment, when you turn this on and you target a certain, let's say a certain target provider, you can do all three if you wanted to do that. So it will then generate that core application with its capability so that you can target it for your cloud environment. You also have custom parameters and typically environmental variables that you want to add potentially, especially if you've got a custom thing that you want to add. The other thing we do, found all of us want to do at some point when we want to show how a system works or how it works, is that you have a synthetic data generator that will take the design of your system and you can turn it on and you can then generate the synthetic data once you've done your system generation. So in this case, you can generate the data first because it already has the design of the data in the background. It's already got that context figured out. And normally what you would do is we normally generate it first. If I go generate system, it's now busy with, in this context of this job, it's already done it for me. So because it was deterministic, I can download this particular case, right? So if we go to where I've downloaded, there's the one there that I've just downloaded now. Unzip it, and you'll see that inside the zip. So that's why it says 2, is because I've done it earlier to make sure that it's kind of work. The structure that it's created for you. It's created you a README, and in the README, a lockdown format means that you can go and look at all the steps that you need to follow to run the system and how it would work and how you would access it. It also creates startup scripts for Windows as well as for Unix platforms. So you can decide where you want to start the app up from. It's got a Docker file because we turned on the Docker file with a full Docker deployment capability. You'll see that the front-end code that is created uses what we call product line practice. So we've got a very, very strict ruling in our architecture to make sure that there's a separation of concerns and that it's reliable when you do this. So you'll see that the way the app is created, where auth sits and your common class and everything. So it's created the entire stack for you, typically how you would want to design a well-designed enterprise stack. You don't want an LLM to just throw everything into a single direction, make files too big and do all those kind of things. That becomes incredibly problematic downstream when you want to maintain something. Then in this case, the server configuration lies here. So you'll see it's a lot different because now you got the API controllers and extensions, and you got interfaces of, in this case, a model view controller that is configured for you. It's got the services, and it's got a full workflow engine that it already generated the context of the way that the activity diagrams work. So it's created the full backend configuration for you. So if we take this one that we're working on now and create ourselves a new terminal, you'll see here that all the code lies there, and I'm going to run this start.sh. You'll see that it contains a full script that is already being prepared for you to make sure that it doesn't use the wrong port number and all of those sort of things. So the idea is that you'll be able to generate many of these, start them up, and it'll find the next available port based on the rules that have been set that for that app, and then spin it up for you so you don't have to worry about any of those configurations. So I'm just going to do a sh start. I'm just telling it in the shell, please run this for me. When I then kick it off, what it will do, you'll see that there are dependencies that it contains in the README file that you would need. So you'd need a node and you need Docker for this particular kind of environment. And then what it does, it loads Mongo from the public instance. So it comes from Docker Hub, and it will then create the connection for you. Because I didn't turn security on for this demo, this means that I've got direct access to it, and I'll show you in a moment what that does. What it'll also do, it'll set up the backend dependencies, install all of those dependencies, get the environment ready, and then open up the database with the front end, with the back end first, then the front end, MCP server that is connected, and the whole stack is essentially configured for you by the time the environment is generated. So while that's going on, let me just quickly show you. If I go to Mongo, just give it a bit of time. Oh, there, waiting for Mongo to come. So what it does, it already knows what the sequence of dependencies are to spin up the entire app for you. Just come back here and I'll go into my Mongo and I'll look at what it's created. It's not created anything yet, so it's not spun up yet. Now that it's spun up, and I look at my Mongo, you'll see there, CRM Gaming Domain 1. It's created the initial kind of data environment for me, and it's connected it to the back end, and it's made sure that everything is ready and accessible. And then you've got a backend API for your MCPs. So you have an MCP configuration already set up that we can, if you want to, I can show you how you connect it into Claude Code or into any one of those sort of local environments or even OpenAI. Or maybe let's just look at that first, just to kind of show you what that looks like. So this is what the server is that was generated for you. Every one of the APIs has become a tool with a well-defined description of how you would use tooling-based design. And it basically created the entire environment with all the APIs predefined with examples and everything already pre-prepared for you. So the idea is that if you have more defined your system description is, the more influence you have over creating an entire system with all documentation pre-prepared. And every time you generate it, it looks the same. So because you have a rule around an enterprise stacks, you don't want to go and rebuild things all the time. You want to be able to build it once and then keep on making changes to it and then build it again and then use it like that. So that's kind of what the server looks like. What it's done in this case, it's created that entire environment for me with this particular dashboard. You would see that at the moment there's no data in here. So what we want to do, let's go back to our generation and go back to our project. Let's just go back to that CRM for a software company that we generated. So this is what I did. It went through that plan stage where it was last time we looked at this. It executed all the steps, working out essentially how you would take reasoning around structure versus behavior, and then contextually got more and more detail until it got a full understanding of what it needs to do to describe the domain as well as design that entire environment. It then concluded it by running validations. So it runs, there's about 5 stages. Each 5 stages got about 5 sub-stages, give or take some. But the point is that it has now got a full understanding of what it's attempting to achieve as an outcome. And then by the time it's done, it's built out all the steps, it processed the funnel, and then your job is completed, and you then have your entire design stack pre-created for you that you can then go and have a look at what it looks like. So if you go to the class diagram, you can see that it's got, let's just put it in this mode, it might be easier to see. It's got order item, customer, company, service, app that I'm selling, campaign that I might run because I didn't tell it that it mustn't generate. So if I ask it now to extend it for sales capabilities or lead management, or I'll ask it to look like Salesforce, it already knows what it is. It'll be able to bring all that capability and then generate it for you. And once this is generate, again, I can just go to generate code. I don't pick anything. I go and you'll see it would have generated for me. I download it. Okay, we've got the other one running already. So let's just go look at this one. So now I've got a new case created, CRM software company generated, unzip it. I just open up a new terminal tab and let's install it. Okay. So that's kind of the idea, is that what will happen over time, we will provide options that you can go and run this entire stack inside our cloud environment. So all you will have to do is either connect cloud environment or connect ours, or you can run it on our server compute, on our platform as a service compute environment that will be supported. So that the idea is that if you want to do any of these experiments or run them, you can do it then entirely through that kind of environment. While that's going on, let's go run a different one that I did earlier today, just so that you can kind of see what the sample data looks like. I did this one earlier. Let's go to terminal tab. Let's just start this one up. This should be quick because it's already being created. I just want to show you what the synthetic data looks like once it's being created. Let's kind of try and stop that container. Let's not do that for this particular case now. It's got the same name and the same product, so that's why we should be careful with the name when it's the same. But anyway, you go generate code and you pick synthetic and you say generate synthetic code and you kick it off. This takes a little bit of time and it can't be deterministic. It has to take the data model. It has to figure out every possible field combination. It has to work out the ranges that is normally used in the context of synthetic data generation. It has to work out all the foreign keys and make sure that all of them are done properly. So by the time you run the case or your project and you want to see the sample data, that it's all done for you end to end. So this takes a little bit of time to figure out per entity exactly what it needs to do before it actually creates the final synthetic data and get it to a point where you can run it. So that's the other thing quickly. And what I'll do is, let me stop this one and I'll just start up the one that's already got the synthetic data in place, just so that you can at least see it, just so that you can see what the front end looks like when it's already got the data in. For instance, let's see if it's not going to connect. Otherwise, we can look at that in a moment. Okay, so the synthetic data, also what you can then do is you can test the graphing capabilities inside your tooling. So if I go to like that case that we looked at earlier, you'll see that it's got some sample data here that's generated for me. What you'll notice in the generated app is that there are full analytics added that it interpreted from the data already by the time it got through it. So if you can think of over time, what we will do is offer a full data enrichment and machine learning capability so that all your data can be pre-prepared and then written out to a target. So in this case, you'll see that all of the data areas that you're going to want to capture data for already generates the content for you. You also have a full workflow engine that has already figured out what the workflows are that typically is for the particular domain. And then you can, then, if you start a workflow, when it gets to a point where it needs user input, then present you with a form, be able to provide your input, create your subkeys, if there are foreign relationships, and carry on, and you'll be able to conclude your entire sequence. There are also what we call enterprise forms. Like in this case, what you see here is like leads and details. If I go to lead and I go show you can see the details and other. I can also then go to analytics. And what analytics would have figured out that if you want to do lead management, there are a whole lot of things related. And it will then give you a preview of everything that already sits within that particular environment that you would need. The other thing that we are very kind of sensitive to is the way that you would manage your data and import and export. So there's no lockdown. So whatever system you've generated is entirely yours, and you'll be able to use it in your environment. And we kind of figured out that by the time you see the convenience of having an entire system generated, you would want to have continuous access. So there's no further runtimes required from us or anything. You run the entire app entirely in your own estate. The other thing is that there are lookup management that you can do. So if you want to do additional categories, and there will be a lot of changes made to this capability over time, including with the plugins for you to create different dashboarding and whatever other kind of environments that you would want to create yourself or build yourself from that point of view. So yeah, this is going to take a bit of time to run. So what I want to do is just quickly show you what it looks like if you use it inside an AI tool. So, excuse me. If this is ChatGPT, you'll see here what I've already done, already connected it. Maybe do for this exercise. Let me just go show you what it looks like. You go to apps, and in apps, you click on the wheel at the top here. You see here, I've already created one. But when you select it, you see that you just have to put that URL that you get from our website and you stick it in here, and it will automatically run the entire OAuth connection, and it's already compliant with what an MCP security layer must look like. All of that's already built in, and you'll be able to connect to it. And then you'll also be able to see all of the tools that you have available to you, an AI tool to run. So in this case, analyze the source code and jobs and the UML creation and everything that you would need to be able to create or whatever interfaces it is that you want to use it for afterwards. You can just then create it from there. So if I come back here, I'll go to tools, I'll ecosystem code, and I'll ask it to create me a project. And we're just going to call it project management system for projects that require activities, deadlines, and resources and timelines, something like that. So what it'll do, it'll go and do the analysis. If I take exactly the same prompt, and I can show you just kind of how more efficient code is than OpenAI in this context. If I connect the ecosystem code environment, it's already connected in this case. Let's say to it ecosystem code, just to force it to go look there. I give it that project. We make it project 2, and I'll ask it to do the work for me. Now what it'll do, it'll connect to the same backend, and I'm now creating 2. Okay, I'm going to allow it. So the difference is, in this case, if it doesn't find me or my security token, that often happens because it expires after, in some cases, maybe a short period as an hour, it will then kick me to the login, where in the Claude Code environment, we've set it up to use the JWT key. You'll see that it already started generating the project for me. So if I go back to where I was here, you'll see that it should start that job any moment. It's there. CRM software. Oh, no, this is from earlier. It's so busy with that other job. Let's just wait for it to kick off properly. You'll then be able to see it inside your normal front end. So there's the request that is preparing for you. So because it's format that is pretty standard and how MCPs determine what they need to do. So you tells me what it's going to create 30 diagrams. This is what it's going to do, what it's already done the pre-work. This is a large generation job. You can check your time. Just ask me for the job status. And it'll give me a percentage. If I refresh here, you'll see that it's kicked off my project management job already. This will take a bit of time to run. It's currently 3% complete. You might see that on the OpenAI environment, it's still thinking. So it burns a lot of tokens to figure out what it needs to do. What you can also do, maybe just quickly show you the login. So it asks me to connect to ecosystem code. I tell it to connect with my credentials. Once it connects with the credentials, it'll authenticate me and it'll create a secure connection between our servers and OpenAI servers. And it'll now be able to execute the tool, and it tells you now that it's connected and you can continue the job end to end, and it's already kind of done for you in that context. The other thing that you can do, if you want to do it from another device, like let's say in this case a phone, and I attach ecosystem code to my chat, I can then ask it the same thing, project name and whatever. I can ask it to create me a project, and you can do it from the app. I find that I created most of our test cases while I'm traveling, or I'm in, go to the gym, or I go for a run. You stop and you say, well, please create me the project because I think this will be a good idea to generate. By the time I get back to the office, my entire system is built. And that's kind of the vision for this sort of thing. Okay, so this is now also busy running. So if we go back to where we were earlier, that synthetic code one is still working. You now see that it's got 2 projects that it's busy creating. It's a full multi-thread environment, so you can create as many as you like because the accounting that is based on token counts. So that just makes it accessible in the backend. Christina, I've taken a lot longer than I wanted to, but I think that we've given everybody kind of like a high-speed overview of working on.
Yeah, I think it was quite detailed as well, and showing everyone the capabilities and how they can use it in their day-to-day, or even just in the roles that they currently occupy in their companies. I think it's a great assistant, it's a great support as well, and it really, really does elevate that productivity to the next level. So yeah, we have a couple of minutes for any questions. If there are any, you're welcome to drop it in the question comment box below, and we are more than happy to answer them. I will also share again the link to our Discord community. We are excited to see what you guys build, any projects that you have planned, and if you require any support, our team is always available to be there for you guys.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Christina. It's Mo here. Yeah, I don't have any particular questions except to say it's great to see what the future is going to look like. I'm not a coding native, so yeah, I really have to find my feet in using these kind of tools, but I've got a lot of ideas. We're all very excited about this. Jay, one question I have, whenever I speak to the coding natives who use vibe coding tools, one of their comments or guidelines is to say that systems like a CRM, for example, often when you use vibe coding, it's difficult to make custom changes to a stack that was written by a vibe coding tool, like say Claude, for example. So you go to a client with a specific requirements, you deliver that, and then they say, oh, but can you add a ear or a tail on top or whatever? And you go and try and add that tail, and then the two front hooves fall off when you add the tail, kind of a thing. Are you suggesting that? Will ecosystem code allow coding natives to overcome those challenges common with the standards?
That's why I think that's exactly the challenge that you have with AI slop, because what happens is a lot of these just generate a normal kind of pointless code, and that's why you need a new approach to deal with that, and that's what we're pursuing. And that means that every time we generate it, the core structure stays the same based on the environment that you are in. So if we deploy, like what we're going to do with our enterprise version, if you give it the security and the standards, the naming conventions, the approach that you want to follow in the company, it must adhere to that structure. So I think that what's happening in the generative world is that people realize that, there are some things that are rules and that are, pre-decided that you don't want tools to generate. But the problem with a lot of the tools that you use for generation, they don't get to the rules. And we've got that entire stack prepared. That solves a huge part of that problem. Once you've worked on one environment with us, you'll probably find that you'll be able to maintain many of them. Or the thinking could be that you just keep on generating one. Because if you keep the core design the same and you extend the design and regenerate it, you're not going to have something that looks nothing like what you did the previous time, like you have with generic vibe coding. So this has got a very different architectural approach.
Thanks, Jay. Glad to know that.
Jay, Billy, Fantastic
Really?
presentation. Just tell me, what plugin can I use to do the same than you're doing? No, I'm joking. This is very impressive. I need the same plugin tools that you're using to generate all this. So
Yeah.
I want that as well, man. Jay, fantastic presentation. I'm going to excite a lot of people. I'm going to see some people with around this. Thank you very much.
Okay. I mean, if people want to find out more, try out things, or what we will be doing is also post some videos. If you ask for questions around how to do a particular construct, or you got a challenge with something, we'll make sure that the Discord channel, like Christina was telling you, is pretty well attended, so we can make sure we answer questions.
Great.
So I think that's it for me.
Release us so we can go build.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good Wednesday, and we will see you in the next session.